Hi there, it's me, Gemma, a story and song, and I wanted to talk to you today about the worst book that I have read all year. In fact, the worst book that I have read in several years. Possibly since I read my worst rated book on Goodreads, which is called Trapped, the author of which escaped me. But let's talk about this. So it is Cari, Mora by Thomas Harris. Now, Thomas Harris is very famous. He wrote the Hannibal Lecter books. His books, have been adapted into some really good movies. Silence of the Lambs being one, the Hannibal TV series, which is one of my favourites of all time. He has written some of my favourite characters, and when I saw that he was bringing out a new book that was a sort of new set of characters set in a new place, I was quite excited. So, book comes out. I don't read any reviews because I didn't want spoilers. I picked this up on my flight to Tenerife, which was about 4 hours. It took me about 2 to get through. And I left a review on Goodreads, which was one word, and that word was yikes. Now, there are several reasons for this. The story of the book, the premise of the book, is that Pablo Escobar had a house in Miami underneath which he built a sort of vault or a safe in which he has hidden lots of money and ill-gotten gold. If you watch Narcos or know anything about Pablo Escobar, apparently at one point they had so much cash that it was just impossible to store. So he has this house. The house has been passed through to several different people. It's got a sort of Amityville curse on it, and people have looked for this gold before. The FBI have looked, but they've never ever found it. But they've never found this gold before. So the book opens with a supposed film crew coming to do some digging underneath this house. In fact, they are criminals. They are looking for Pablo Escobar's gold. The caretaker of this house is Cari Mora. She is an immigrant from Colombia who was a child soldier in FARC. She has scars on her arms, and according to every man in the whole book, she is the epitome of beauty. Everyone wants to sleep with her, everyone wants to protect her, etc. So she quickly realizes that the leader of the film crew, Hans, who is a stereotypical German villain, is dodgy as fuck, as they would say, and she hightails it out of there. Her instincts tell her, keep away until this is all done, and she does. Basically, she's like, bye. Now, in the sort of 20 minutes that the villain has seen her, he has become obsessed with her. And in addition to digging for Pablo Escobar's gold, he is also a procurer of trafficked women. He is a serial killer. Hello, Finn. Look at that guy. He is a serial killer. Finn is going to knock this camera. He is awful, and he has like a water cremation machine in his lair where he disposes of his female victims. He also mutilates them to order, which is pretty gross. And throughout the book, he is planning to kidnap the main character and sell her on to a high bidder after having mutilated her and whatever. So that's the premise of the book. Cari Mora is linked in to some guys who she seems to know from around, who are also from Colombia, and they are linked in with a sort of look at this guy. Ethan. They are linked in with a sort of Fagin-esque thief school called 10 Bells, and there's a whole subplot with Don Ernesto, who's like a crime boss, blah blah blah. He also wants Pablo Escobar's gold. Everyone wants this gold. Everyone wants the gold, and they want Cari Mora. So Cari Mora, for some reason, after having sort of done a bunk and sort of come out from underneath the bad guy's radar, decides to go on a sort of field trip with one of her 10 bells friends. He gets killed. She reveals herself to be a secret badass, and the plot progresses on from there. Now, on paper, all this sounds really good, but the most interesting part of the book was a section where an alligator has a point of view and it describes eating a guy. That's the most interesting part of the whole book. Cari Mora, on paper, sounds like an interesting character, but suffers from strong female character syndrome, as you find a lot of female characters written by men can be women as well, but in this case, you're like, yeah, this was written by a man. She's just not interesting. She could have been. She has an interesting backstory. She was kidnapped as a child, forced into being a child soldier, all that kind of stuff. Interesting character on paper, but written, the way that she's written is the most important thing about her to the other characters is her looks and her beauty. And every male character who comes into contact with her has at least a little, few paragraphs musing about how if he was younger or if he wasn't married or whatever, he would just love to be with Cari Mora. So she's the number one problem. Number two problem is the villain, and I use air quotes here, who, like I said, his name's Hans. He is German, and he is a sadist, I suppose. We're meant to be afraid of him. He's a very Mason Verger-esque character, but taken to an extreme. And he, at one point, is in like a purpose-built wet room, from what it sounded like, a torture room, basically. And he's wearing like a latex gimp suit and knocking himself unconscious, blowing his Aztec death whistle. How in the hell are you supposed to take a character seriously when they're knocking themselves unconscious, blowing an Aztec death whistle? I mean, it struck me very similar to Mason Verger drinking martinis full of children's tears, which I think is one of Harris's main issues as a writer. Sometimes less is actually more, in terms of when you're describing a villain and that they're evil, things like that. You don't necessarily always need to go to that extreme, and certainly with Hans, he does go to that extreme. And he went to that extreme so much so that it was impossible to take him seriously as a villain, because you're just like, okay, well, that's a thing that they're doing. And yeah, and there was like this stock policeman / FBI character whose wife had been shot and she'd lost her memory, but he felt the need to say that they were having sex at the time that they shouldn't happen, and she was on top of him, and blah 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 blah. But I was just like, what? There was no point to that particular character. He could have been completely excised from the story and it would have made absolutely zero difference. Like, they could have replaced that character with a sexy lamp and it would have been fine. In fact, they could probably have replaced Cari Mora with a sexy lamp as well, to be fair, and I don't think it would have made that much difference. So I gave this book 2 stars. I am thinking about rounding it down to 1. It is the worst book I read this year. It is the worst book I read in a long time. And sometimes an editor needs to step in and tell an author to stop. And I just think that maybe Thomas Harris has gotten to the point where he's so big that he's like a John Grisham or something, and it's almost like too big to fail, too big to have a bad book. In this instance, this is just a bad book. So yeah, don't read Cari Mora, don't put yourself through it. If you like fucked up shit in books and your murder mysteries, go and read like Karen Slaughter or like Kathy Reichs or something like that, or even like Stephen King. Just read. I mean, Stephen King's got his problems, but this is a whole other level. A whole other level. So yes, I don't recommend it. I suffered so that you may not suffer. So yeah, I'll do some more book reviews at some point, but that's it from me after this 10-minute rant of Cari Mora with a special guest appearance by a sleepy dog. So I will speak to you next time. Take care. Bye bye.